Hello and welcome to David the Teacher. I've prepared a very interesting topic for this video, but at first I would like to tell you why did I make it. I usually notice how people inaccurately ask questions and sound impolite even if they wanted to sound polite. For example, where is the pharmacy? Or where is the nearest coffee shop? It's actually not the way that you want to sound when you talk to a stranger, and you should sound like, let me give you an example. Excuse me, could you tell me where the nearest store is? Sure, it's next to FLUENT Bank. Thank you, and do you know if there's a bus station near here? The bus station is also near the bank. Okay, thank you a lot. Did you notice that I used unusual structures in my questions? I actually used indirect questions to sound more polite. And now I'm going to tell you in this video what's the difference between indirect and direct questions. Alright, so please stay tuned and we are starting. So let's start discussing the difference between direct and indirect questions. Let's start with direct. We usually use inversion in direct questions. But what does inversion mean? It is when you put to be or auxiliary verb before the pronoun. For example, I'm alright. It's my positive sentence, and I will use inversion to make a direct question. And it means I'll put am before the pronoun I. Am I alright? Okay, you are all right. Are you all right? Let's analyze another sentence. For example, I go to the supermarket. This is my positive present simple sentence. I go to the supermarket. Okay, and I'll use inversion to make it direct question. Do I go to supermarket? I added auxiliary do before the pronoun I. Do I go to the supermarket? And now I have a direct question. So our first rule, if you want to make a direct question, you're going to use inversion. And the second rule is we use auxiliary verbs to make direct questions. Auxiliary verbs are to have, to do, and to be. We use auxiliary verbs with a main verb to express main verb's voice, mood, or tense. For example, do you do your homework? Do you do your homework? The first do is an auxiliary verb and we used it to make a question sentence. The second do is a main verb and it means some process. Did you go to school yesterday? Did you go to school yesterday? I used auxiliary verb did in this sentence to make a past simple question sentence, and it's actually a direct question. And I used auxiliary verb in this question. So if you use auxiliary verb or inversion to make questions, these are direct questions. However, we don't use auxiliary verbs and inversion when we make indirect questions. For example, I'm wondering if you could pick me up tomorrow at 5 p.m. I'm wondering if you could pick me up at 5 p.m. Or, don't you mind telling me when we start the meeting tomorrow? Don't you mind telling me when we start the meeting tomorrow? First of all, I'll give you some expressions to start indirect questions. Let's call them openings. Okay, openings. So the first opening is can or could you tell me? Then I was wondering. I was wondering. Then do you have an idea? Do you have an idea? Or would you mind telling me? Would you mind telling me? Or I wonder. I wonder. Then I'd like to know. I would like to know. Then we have I want to know. I want to know. We also can say, can I ask you? Can I ask you? And would it be possible? Would it be possible? Now, let me give you some examples with these openings. For example, could you tell me where the nearest bank is? Could you tell me where the nearest bank is? I was wondering if you sent me the book. I was wondering if you sent me the book. Do you mind telling me if you had fun yesterday? Do you mind telling me if you had fun yesterday? So, as you see, I used the same openings that I gave you to make my indirect questions. And now I'm going to teach you how you can build these questions. Okay, I'm going to teach you the structure of them. I'm going to start with yes/no questions and try to turn them into indirect yes/no questions. The first thing that you should know is the structure of a sentence. So, as you know, we start with the openings, then we add if or whether. It's opening plus if or whether, plus affirmative sentence. Okay? So this is our structure. For example, do you have a computer? It's just a simple yes/no question, which is a direct question, by the way. Do you have a computer? But now let's turn it into indirect yes/no question. According to the structure, it's going to be, I'm wondering if you have a computer. I'm wondering if you have a computer. So we have our opening, I'm wondering, then we have if, then we have an affirmative sentence. You have a computer. I'm wondering if you have a computer. My another example is he French? Is he French? Again, it's a direct yes/no question, and let's turn it into indirect yes/no question, and it's going to be, can I ask you if he's French? Can I ask you if he is French? Okay, again, I used opening, then I used if, then an affirmative sentence. He is French. Can I ask you if he is French? And my last example is, did you attend the meeting? It's a direct question. Did you attend the meeting? But indirect form of it is, would you mind telling me if you attended the meeting? Would you mind telling me if you attended the meeting? And I hope you noticed how I said, would you mind telling me if you attended the meeting? I added ed to the verb attend to make indirect past simple yes/no question. So in the part following if or whether, we usually use general rules of verb tenses. For example, do you mind telling me if you had been to the UK before we met each other? Do you mind telling me if you had been to the UK before we met each other? Or, I'm wondering whether you will call her. I'm wondering whether you will call her. Or, would it be possible to tell me if you are going to visit your grandparents? Would it be possible to tell me if you are going to visit your grandparents? As you see, after if or whether, I used affirmative sentences according to the general rules of verb tenses. Let's analyze our first example, which is, do you mind telling me if you had been to the UK before we met each other? Now let's get rid of the opening, which is, do you mind telling me, and if. As you see, we have just simple affirmative sentence where I used past perfect and past simple. The second example was, I'm wondering whether you will call me. I'm wondering whether you will call me. Get rid of the opening and whether. Now we have, you will call me. You will call me. And the last one was, would it be possible to tell me if you are going to visit your grandparents? You are going to visit your grandparents. Now we have just an affirmative sentence where I used to be going to. I'd like to give you a few more examples to make it clear. And the first one is, did he go to museum? Did he go to museum? And the indirect form of it, I'm wondering if he went to the museum. I'm wondering if he went to the museum. The second example is, are you running now? Are you running now? And let's turn it into an indirect question. Can I ask you if you are running now? Can I ask you if you are running now? Do you like swimming? And the indirect form of it, I wonder if you like swimming. I wonder if you like swimming. I hope it's clear how to make indirect yes-no questions. But we also have WH questions in English. By the way, WH questions are questions like who, where, why, what, and so on. Plus we have how, and we also call them question words. So the structure of the sentence is not very different actually. Here we replace if and whether with the question words like which, where, why, when, how, and so on. Therefore, the formula is the opening plus the question word plus the affirmative sentence. For example, what do you do? It's our direct question. What do you do? And the indirect form of it, I'd like to ask you what you do. I'd like to ask you what you do. Okay? So as you see, I've used the opening, I'd like to ask you, then WH question, our question word, what, then affirmative sentence, you do. I'd like to ask you what you do. The next example is, where did you go last night? Where did you go last night? And it would be, I was wondering where you went last night. I was wondering where you went last night. And I want you to remember that we put the verb after the subject of the sentence in indirect questions. Okay, please don't forget it, especially to be. For example, can you tell me where the stair is? Can you tell me where the stair is? Or, can you tell me where you are? Can you tell me where you are? As you see, I put to be after the subject of the sentence, where you are, where the stair is. Okay? So this is the end of the video, and I hope you liked it and you can make indirect questions to sound more polite. If so, please subscribe to my channel, check my other videos and press the bell button to stay with me. And of course, I'm gonna see you in the next one. Have a nice day. Bye bye.